I don't see. Okay, we're live on yours. Okay. Hi, everybody. This is Steve Sabatowski, publisher of BayouBuzz.com, and thank you for joining us. We're going to be talking to Jim Brown about a number of different issues, and we're hoping that you can go ahead and tell everybody that we're going to be talking politics. So, we'd love to hear from you. Uh, Jim Brown, for those people who do not know, Jim is a former state senator, insurance commissioner for the state of Louisiana, and also Secretary of State. Good afternoon, Jim. How are you doing today?
Steve, good to talk to you and to all your viewers out there, your listeners out there. So many things happening on both the international level, but we'll probably talk about today with what's happening in Taiwan, what's happening in Ukraine. So many national issues affecting people all over the country. And of course, right home here in Louisiana, we have our share of controversies involving insurance and so many focuses that are leading to a very creative and active governor's race that takes place in a year from now. So, no matter where you go, there is so many things going on. And the other thing I'd say, Steve, before we get into it is there are issues that really affect people. So much of the controversy in Washington or in Baton Rouge maybe is of interest and maybe has some outlying far reaching effect. But the issues that we're going to talk about here today, that you read about in the news, see on the evening news, really affect every individual. I mean, you talk about the abortion debate that is so controversial. You talk about all the massive tax increases that may be necessary to fund all this international confrontation. In Louisiana, so many needs that we have right here. So these things are biting, current, here and now issues that we all should pay attention to because they really do affect our lives. And if we don't like it, we've got elections right around the corner where you could do something about it. So a very important time to talk about current events.
Okay, so I just want to remind everybody that if they have a question, if they, please go ahead and post it, and we will go ahead and post your question or your comment. We'd love to hear from you. It says comment below. We want to hear from you. So let's see. Let me go and uh, let's talk. What issue do you think is the hottest issue nationally? I'll put it like that.
Well, some issues stay out front more than anything else, and some are kind of confusing. For example, I think most people are aware of the fact that there's great controversy in China versus the Taiwan, that is a Chinese island off of China, and the fact that we are protecting Taiwan from takeover of the Chinese who think they should be able to reemerge that country. Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, was in China this week. And I thought it was interesting, Steve. The number three terrorist in the world that we've been seeking for 20 years was killed in a strike that took place by America, drone strike, and it didn't get a whole lot of play. It got a little play, but not that much. Nancy Pelosi, who is third in line to being president, she's just Speaker of the House. She goes to Taiwan, and my gosh, that completely dominates the news. I would think that the terrorist attack of Al-Zawahiri, I believe his name is, was much more important than some congresswoman going to visit Taiwan. But, we change our perspective, we change our emphasis. I think what's happened is that in the case of the terrorist, 9/11 is behind us. We feel more secure. We've gotten out of Afghanistan, and that doesn't affect us that much in our opinion. We don't relate to that much, even though it could really be a world changing event if there were more terrorist attacks. Pelosi going to Taiwan, I think, is blown way out of proportion. But the Chinese have reacted very dramatically by basically putting a barricade around Taiwan. So these issues have a different balance to them, and and so things that we think are important today may not be quite so important here just a couple of days from now. So I would think that the terrorist killing would be a major issue that we don't even list in our events, heavy events to talk about. Pelosi going to Taiwan. I think the Chinese are rattling that sword right now. But Steve, our ties are so dramatically together economically that I think we had these saber rattling events. It's going to take something like the Ukrainian affair involving Russia, where our Russian ties have dramatically been severed, and we're way, way apart with Russia. We're not in that situation with China. So my point is, yes, the Chinese are overreacting. They're saying, hey, here's what we can do. We're going to show you guys. And they want to look real tough on the world scene. I don't think it's going to come to a confrontation, quite frankly. Whereas I think that if we were in a state where China was trying to take over something like Russia took over Ukraine, that would put it in a whole different perspective. So in any event, I don't think it's that big of a confrontation. And I'm talking about China, Taiwan. And I've been to Taiwan. They have a huge arsenal for their defense. And I think China is hoping through their political ties and political influence to slowly reunite the two countries, is what I think. I think the sabers aren't going to be are going to be rapidly shaking. When you talk about Ukraine, Steve, I think that's much more in the front burner because I think that the danger for Ukraine is that there may be a tiring effect in the United States. The average person is saying, my gosh, look what I'm paying for the cost of a gallon of gas, the economy, inflation, and everybody says this is related to Ukraine. Is Ukraine that big of a deal for us? Steve, I would imagine 85% of the American people couldn't even point Ukraine out on a map. So there may be a tiring effect that we're seeing starting to develop where people just, okay, we're all for Ukraine, but do we change our lifestyle dramatically? Do we pay more in taxes? How important is that going to be? And that's something
Well,
we're talking about for some time to come.
sure, absolutely. And let me just say, those people who are watching, we're on Facebook, on different sites on Facebook. We're on Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn. So please, if you have any questions, you want to make a comment, go ahead and do so. In terms of Ukraine, my response is that my question really is the issue really about Ukraine? Or is it about NATO and our? I mean, you hear all the time. Well, nobody trusts Joe Biden. I mean, he's weak, and our allies don't have faith in him and can't trust him. Well, I mean, if we pulled away or if we didn't get involved, I mean, what would happen then? I mean, NATO in Europe really, as far as I'm concerned, they hated the past 4 years. They felt so uncertain. Now they feel certain. Unfortunately, they're in the middle of war. But I mean, if we pull out, my gosh, I mean, we now have how many countries in NATO? And you think they're going to support us? You think that, say, our Asian friends are going to support us if we pull out of NATO or if we pull out of Ukraine?
When
I
you
don't
say
think people.
friends, and I see what you're saying. A year ago, if we would have talked about this, you're right. NATO was not that strong under the Trump administration. There was not the united support that we're seeing more today. And you're right. The Ukrainian confrontation has brought NATO together. I think that in retrospect, that Putin has made a real tactical error in forcing NATO to unite. Now we're talking about Sweden coming in. And so you've got other countries that even put the alliance up there all the more. If Putin would have called me a year ago, I'd say, listen, do some very hard negotiating, offer insurances, buy off some of the mayors in Ukraine if you have to, but slowly try to bring this thing together. If you go in there like you have, full blast, you're going to unite NATO and put us into a situation where there's going to be a long, drawn out affair. I think that's what we're seeing right now. My concern is that as we spend more and more money supporting Ukraine, don't go to the edge of actually coming in with troops or sending in airplanes. Is there going to be a wear down effect? Like I say, I think I'm hearing people I talk to say, well, yeah, we got to support them, but darn it, I'm tired of paying this high gas price, and I'm tired of all these costs. And how long does it go? What's it going to be like 6 months from now? And Steve, quite frankly, in my opinion, and in the opinion of a number of people who I respect, they don't think this issue is going to go away. There's going to be a quick end to it. There's just no foreseeable solution that anybody can build a consensus around. So we're in this for a long run, and I just worry about the tiring effect, quite frankly. And Steve, if I could throw another perspective very quickly before I take your question, you know, NATO, yes, is very, very important, and we need to stand up for these people fighting for freedoms. But if you want to be a cynic about it, there are takeovers going on all over Africa and other Asian countries that are just as violent, just as bitter, and just as concerning. It should be, and yet we're not getting all excited. I guess if you want to be a real cynic, you can say it. Well, it's it's more a white man's fight. We can relate to the Ukraine because they're more like us. We're over in Africa; they're not. That's what cynics would say. So my point is, this is a fight we've chosen to get involved in, where we haven't gotten involved in Kosovo and many African confrontations. We've kind of picking and choosing who our fights are with, quite frankly.
Well, we have a strong bond. We have a strong relationship, and those countries. I mean, let's not forget. You know, they have supported us when we wanted them and needed them in Afghanistan, etc. They came to our support. We haven't yet come to going to their support for anything,
When you say
to my recollection.
who was they you're referring to, Steve? You're talking about
I'm
NATO.
okay. I'm talking about NATO.
Well, I'm not sure NATO. We kind of had to push NATO to come together, and NATO wasn't, in my opinion, just jumping for joy to get involved in the Ukraine-Russian affair. But once Russia rattled the sabers at them, it kind of united NATO a lot more together. But President Trump was very critical of NATO for not putting up their share of the money and not lending to their own defense. So now you see more of that. But in the past, they've been reluctant, the NATO members, to jump into these skirmishes that are going on.
Sure, and I understand that nobody wants to engage in a skirmish. The point I'm making though is that you brought up Africa for an example, and I'm just saying that I think that there's a major difference, and that is that we have alliances, major alliances, with European nations in NATO, and also certain say Pacific Rim nations. So we don't have those kind of alliances elsewhere, at least in terms of Africa, those other states you're talking about. Yeah, let me go ahead. I'm going to put this up for a second. If anybody have any thoughts in terms of, please go ahead and we'll put up your thoughts. Let me go and, okay. So in front of us, we have the Senate agrees to climate and tax deal, clearing the way for the vote. So it looks like Joe Biden is might get a win. What do you think about that?
Well, it's been a real long struggle, and of course, we're getting down to elections are 3 months away. This term in office of this is only what 6 5 months, to less than 6 months before we get a new Congress. So Biden needed this win. He needed to get this thing passed, and it's still not passed yet. It'd only take one Democrat to kind of back off. I see where Bernie Sanders says that the whole program for climate tax change has not gone far enough. It should have gone much, much further, and he's very disappointed in it. Something he said yesterday. It looks like with Sinema coming on, the Arizona Democrat, and with Manchin from West Virginia coming on, it looks like it's going to hold. Manchin's been the holdout, has been the most high-profile guy. He's in a state where coal is a major source of income coming into the state. Jobs fill there, and so he had some reservations in terms of the economics of his state. And then there's also the politics involved. You're going to see if this matter is brought for the vote in the Senate, Steve, and it will be brought, there will not be one Republican who will vote for it. So the vote's going to be 50-50 with the vice president breaking the mold. Is that all politics? Well, an awful lot of it is politics, no doubt about it. So I saw today in the press, Senator Kennedy and Senator Cassidy both said this program is going to hurt the oil industry in Louisiana because of the additional taxes being put on the industry. So there's a lot of confrontation and a massive effort to get to this point to where the House, by a very slim majority, and the Senate by an even 50-50, looks like they're going to pass this. It's very controversial, and it's very complicated, too. Something I don't like about what happens in Congress, they don't vote just on climate change. They don't vote just on a tax reform, though they call it. They pile all this stuff together. There is infrastructure needs, there is water quality, there's all these different issues all in this one big piece of legislation. So therefore it's confusing and the average person doesn't understand. Looks like it's going to pass, though, giving Biden a much needed win for him since he's been floundering for so much. And and there's a lot of advantages in the legislation for Louisiana, you can argue. But both U.S. senators will vote against it. All of the members of Congress, down your way, Steve Scalise, and all the Republican members of Congress will vote no, with our one Democratic congressman voting yes, along with Biden. So, bottom line, it's very complicated. I would predict it's going to pass. The benefits, there are $300 million in tax reductions in the bill, tax increases on wealthy corporations. A lot of, and I say tax increases. A lot of loopholes are closed. The whole private equity business is taxed at a very favorable rate, for example, costing the Treasury billions and billions of dollars. That loophole is going to be closed. So it's not going to be that the taxes are increased, just a lot of reform. Plus, the IRS has gotten billions of dollars to hire new people. They'll do a lot more auditing, Steve. So get ready for your audit. I went through an audit once many years ago. We have more time, I'd tell you about it. Oh, it's a nightmare. I mean, loads and loads of paper. You don't win an IRS audit, but they'll be doing a lot more of that under this new legislation. So in any event, it's a hardcore Republican Democrat. Republicans are going to, rather Democrats are going to eke it out, and then we'll see if. And right now, if you had to bet, put your dollar down on the wheel, you'd say that there's an awfully good chance that the House Representatives will turn over and become Republican dominated or Republican controlled. So the Senate is going to be critical to see if a lot of the stuff that's done in this legislation is undone when the new Congress comes in in 2023.
Okay, I just put something on the screen. You probably are seeing it right now. Jobs report. Uh, 528,000 jobs in July. Unemployment rate falls to 3.5. My question is, are we in a recession? What about these jobs?
Well, there's been a lot of shuffling, I think, in the job market. There's millions and millions of people who had uh, not blue collar jobs, but jobs where they were in retail. They were working in department stores, in restaurants, that kind of thing, by the millions. And standing on their feet all day was not all that appealing to them. So what's happened now? They're seeking out other jobs. There are a lot of things open where they can go to. Uh, they can go to night school or go to a junior college, pick up the degree where they improve their computer skills and get some jobs that let them sit down in an office or work from home. So there's been a shuffling in the job market. I don't know if there's been all these new jobs because uh, there's such an opening in terms of restaurants. I left my credit card last night at a local restaurant in Baton Rouge, Steve, and went by to get it. And the owner was bemoaning the fact that he just can't get any help. He says, Jim, I've got to block off about 40% of my restaurant because I don't have the servers. I don't have the bartenders. I can't find the people to work. They just don't want to come to work. I think a lot of those people got kind of, hey, when they got a check coming in and they were at home and they weren't having to stand up all day long, they looked for some alternatives. So I'm not surprised the job market is increasing. It's a question of how long that will continue and is there a solid base to that increase in the job market. As far as recession, I don't think we're in a recession. The stock market has kind of bottomed out, it looks like. This last couple of weeks have been better in terms of increasing. I check the market every morning and every evening. And you mentioned both jobs and it looks like inflation has kind of balanced out a bit, not going down, but I see some leveling off signs. If I had to project, I don't think we're going into a recession.
Okay, and of course, gas prices have dropped significantly, although obviously they rose like a skyrocket, but they've dropped what 70 cents I think in the last month or so.
$3.21 I paid earlier today in filling up my car. $3.21. That's a far cry from $4.60 I was paying a couple of months ago. So now some economists are saying, well, but that could go back up again because I don't have that much new energy coming on in. I hope it doesn't. If it stays like that, though, and we see these other signs leveling off, I'm hopeful we're not going to see a recession. I would predict we're not. And of course, we certainly are hoping that we don't go into a recession.
Okay, on the screen right now, we have a we have Vice President Cheney who is doing a commercial for his daughter. As you know, his daughter was trumped by the former president. And here is Anthony Sabatini saying, when I get to Congress, I'll be filing a bill to remove Cheney's name from all federal buildings. So my question is, um, does that mean that these people who are going to Congress and these people who are in Congress are pro-Trump, or are they pro-crime, or are they against Cheney, or are they? I mean, what are they? I know that's my bias, but I just don't understand it.
I think out west in Liz Cheney's district, you've got two colors. It's you're that says it's either red or it's redder. There's no middle ground at all. There's no light red. You're either very red or dark red. So She's in a very conservative district, and I think she had to think this thing through. She made some choices that she was going to go against the leadership. At the time, she was third in line in terms of the Republican leadership, and right behind our Representative Steve Scalise. And it may be, I think that I think she has certain principles she wants to live by, and I don't want to second guess her, but I also think it could be very, very calculated. I think she knew that as a state, rather as a congresswoman, she was tired of it, didn't have a whole lot of future there. If she came across as the anti-Trump within the Republican Party, there's a way to raise a lot of money. Dan, I've got some friends in New York. Brother Steve, I've got some friends in New York that are very anti-Trump, and they're concerned about the future of the Republican Party, and they're raising a ton of money for Liz Cheney. I project that she's going to have a hard time getting elected, despite of her dad doing the TV spots. I think she could well lose that election, but if she does, she's not going to fade away into the sunset. She will be the loyal opposition within the Republican Party, put a huge think tank together, speak all over the country, raise hundreds of millions of dollars, and she may think that's her future, quite frankly. So I'm not sure she's that concerned if she gets beat. I think she wants to get reelected, but if she doesn't, where to 95% of the members of Congress, that's kind of the end of the road, temporarily at least. It's just the beginning of the road of a whole new direction for Liz Cheney. That's how I see her weighing this in her mind. And whatever happens, she feels like she's going to be a winner.
Well, I got to tell you, she has taken an incredible risk. I mean, regardless, she does have a family. This is her career. She was number 3 in line, but she just said, "Hey, I can't take this. This goes against my values. This goes against my sense of who I think this country needs to be." And I really give her a tremendous amount of credit. I know that a lot of people in Louisiana don't feel like that, and so be it. But I think that when you look at what happened and what she was willing to sacrifice, my congressman Steve Scalise. I mean, sorry, I know he's going to win another re-election, but he has sold himself out on this issue.
Well, Steve, you got 2 choices. You got the Republican, you got 3 choices. The Republican, the Democrat, or a move to be outside the box, but in a very powerful position in terms of running a think tank, giving speeches, traveling the country. Who knows? Maybe even running for president. So Cheney is a very smart lady. Has thought this thing through. She's the only high-profile Republican on the January 6th commission looking into January 6th. There's all the other Democrats, and there's Liz Cheney. So she set herself apart, and I think the lady knew the risk. I think she knew the risk coming in. So I agree with you that she's taken some very hardcore, noble stands and tried to get to the bottom of what really happened, which I want to see them do. But again, she knows the risks, and if she gets beat, it may be a jumping off point for something even bigger in her future.
Okay, so let me go ahead and I'm going to play something for a second.
For the sake of Americans' economic futures and for the sake of our national security, Mr. President, we cannot continue to rely on foreign oil imports. We can't. While pretending to run this country using wind, solar, and wishful thinking, because that's what the president's new policy is on energy. It's wind.
Okay, there it is, John Kennedy. Do you think his job is at risk?
Well, I think that John Kennedy's playing to the crowd. He will be easily reelected. I was talking to a relative I know that's been a Kennedy fan, and has given him money on several occasions. And she says the fundraising is just sensational. She gets 4 and 5 letters a day sometimes. She's getting telephone calls. She says where Kennedy is saying, they're after me. My back's against the wall. I've got this huge uphill fight. Send me money, send me money, send me money. He's got $28 million, I think, and his goal is to raise $50 million before before the election takes place, and his opponent might have up $2 million to spend. So, and he's in a state that is very close to Wyoming, it being either, where you cut out Shreveport and you cut out the city of New Orleans and you cut out the city of Monroe, and we're either red or we're redder, just like I mentioned about Wyoming. So as a consequence, Kennedy's easily reelected. He's playing to the crowd, to the oil interests that are important to his state, but also a source of huge income coming into him in terms of campaign contributions. And so he's astute in his politics. And if you're looking just to stay on the state level and raise a lot of money, he's got the system working down to a T, because nobody's raising more money than John Kennedy at the pace he's on right now.
Okay, so here's the last topic we're going to cover. Breaking. This is from my weatherman at Fox 8, David Bernard. Close to 100,000 Louisiana residents have no insurance as the peak of hurricane season arrives. Another insurance company drops out of Louisiana as thousands of homeowners scramble to coverage for the hurricane season. Now, obviously, you're a former insurance commissioner, so you have some knowledge about this. What the heck is going on? I mean, other than, instead of, I don't want to bash our current insurance commissioner, that's not the point. But what is going on?
Well, Steve, first of all, those 100,000 people do have an option. There is a Louisiana Citizens Property Insurance Program where you got to pay 10% more than the going rate, but you can get insurance in groups like that. Citizens should have never been formed. We talked about John Kennedy. Senator Kennedy said that the Citizens Property Insurance Company, a state-created company, is the biggest financial disaster in the history of Louisiana. That's John Kennedy's words. And it's been poorly run, and it just shouldn't have been created in the first place. Under the old system, what would happen is, if you couldn't find any affordable insurance in your area, then you went to something called the Fair and Coastal Plan, where they would have to insure you, and the companies would take turns. In other words, it'd be State Farm would take this client, the next one would be Allstate, the next one would be Progressive, and it worked well. Didn't cost us anything. The insurance companies had to pay for it. Well, politics got involved, and they created this Louisiana Citizens. No other state in America has this plan like Louisiana Citizens. But so it was a mistake to create. Now, why are these companies leaving the state, going bankrupt? Well, one of the big mistakes was that they got profit greedy. They love bringing all that income. You see, we went for about 9 or 10 years where there was no hurricane activity. They got kind of lazy, said, gosh, let's just take that money and pay good salaries to our people and should give a profit back to our shareholders. And they didn't buy reinsurance. The responsible insurance companies buy insurance for them, just like you and I buy insurance from them. What they do is they lay off part of the bet. If they're taking in $1,000, they'll take half of that and buy reinsurance from Lloyd's of London, so that if a big event happens, they only are on the hook for 50%. Lloyd's of London pays the other 50%, but of course they got to pay off half the premium. It costs them money. So if you're greedy, you don't do that. And the bottom line is that the regulators should have cracked the whip and said, if you're going to operate in Louisiana, you got to buy reinsurance. They didn't do that. These companies didn't have reinsurance. And when Ida and these couple of hurricanes hit in a 1-year period, it cost them a lot of money, and some went out of business. The ones that went out of business are small companies that never should have been here to begin with, quite frankly. So poor regulation, number one. Number two, these companies should have, they got greedy. And then number two, the number three, we never should have put in this citizens property insurance, but we're stuck with it. It's here now. The governor and the legislature are not inclined to make any changes. So what the bottom line is, yes, you can get property insurance, but it's going to cost you more money. It shouldn't have to cost you that much more. And if it does, the system's out of whack. And hopefully that'll be a big issue in the coming elections next year.
The impact of global warming, what do you think in terms of high insurance in Louisiana, as well as elsewhere? But
well, yeah, the Gulf of Mexico is rising. There's the melt. When glaciers melt up in Antarctica, it comes down to us, and we get more of a rise in terms of our shore in Louisiana, the Florida coast. Some people tell me that Houma and Morgan City 40 years from now won't even be here anymore because the Gulf has completely overtaken them. So we're very slow to respond in terms of climate change. And there's all these deniers that say it doesn't happen. Look, we're in the hottest summer you can imagine right now. And something's going on. Our weather cycles are completely out of whack. The seas are rising. Anybody that says there's not a climate problem with global warming is just not being realistic. But Steve, it's such a massive problem. It's going to take a federal response. We can't deal with it in Louisiana. We can't stop the Gulf of Mexico from impeding on our shores. There's some things we can do in terms of erosion and putting up some barriers. But it's like putting our finger in the dike. We're just too small down here. And, if I were the governor and I were some of our leaders, I'd be making the case, look at what you got to lose. This is not Florida where maybe your vacation home may go underwater. This is a state that has the most productive oil and gas in the country, the biggest seafood industry in the country, the first, third, and fifth largest ports in the country. And all that's at risk if we don't do something about climate change. So that message is not coming out very loud from our congressional delegation and our leaders in Baton Rouge.
it seems to me that should be a issue in the upcoming elections. I mean, to me, I think it's a major issue. If we get hit by another major hurricane, that just means
it should be. And I know something about issues in the governor's race. I ran for governor some 37 years ago, and I've had several of the potential candidates say, could they visit with me a little bit? And I'm sure going to urge them to talk about global warming, climate change, and how that affects economically the bottom line in Louisiana. Whether they'll grab a hold of the issue or not, time will tell.
Let's talk about you. What's going on? You're a publisher. Tell us about your publishing industry.
Well, Steve, I've written 7 books. In fact, I got a new one coming out in a couple of weeks. I'll show it up here. The Jim Brown Reader. It's 800 pages, so if you don't want to read it, you can use it as a doorstop, you see, because it's so heavy. So this is a compilation of many, many things I've written, and a lot of new stuff. If you can see in Greens as the muse in me, I sit down and did some soul searching with my muse, my alter ego, and I wrote a novella about that experience. And so it's already, it's not going to be available for 3 weeks, but you can look at that and other books I've written at thelisburnpress.com, LISBURN, or if you just Google Jim Brown books, it'll come on up. My latest book's done very well. I guess I'm at about 35,000 books. I spoke to the Good Old Boys a social club of Metairie yesterday.
Really?
They're down in Kenner at the Knights of Columbus. We had a marvelous time with about 100 members of that club and enjoyed gossiping and having fun with them, and sold a lot of books down there. So I hope your readers will take a look and Google JimBrownLA.com is the easiest. Go to my website. You'll see that. I write a column every week that you subscribe to. So I'm having fun as an old guy, Steve, just writing a good bit and doing shows like yours and being a great grandfather. That's my priorities right now.
Sounds to me like a winner. Really, absolutely sounds like a winner. So we'll have to in roughly 3 weeks or so when your book comes out. So maybe you can talk to us about it then.
I look forward to it. Look forward to coming back. And I've got a couple of more books I'm not going to tell you about once the author gets them done. So if, say, in a month we get together, I've got some books that affect Louisiana very dramatically that'll be coming out. So we're staying very, very active in the publishing business.
Sounds super. Okay, listen, those people who are watching, again, we're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn. We're glad that you're here. Hopefully, you take a look at the show and share it with your friends. For those, we had a little technical problem earlier today. Those things happen, but we were able to pull it off, and I really thank you. So, Jim, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I want you wait a few seconds. I'm going to say goodbye and end the stream. Thank you again.